Welcome to the Ducksoft Weekly Sandbox Review. If you want to make stuff in Sandbox yourself, the description of this video has a link to a page that will give your Steam account access to the developer preview. If you see this message here, that means Sandbox should appear in your Steam library after restarting Steam. First, some updates on a few things that were discussed last week. Most issues with the new asset browser have been fixed. I can say now that this new asset browser is much better than the old one. Body Controller has been renamed to Player Controller and added to Sandbox itself. No need to get it from the Walker repo anymore. The October update news post has been uploaded to s&box.game. It covers many things I haven't talked about in these videos, including some exciting near-future plans for Sandbox. A link to that news article is in the description. Dedicated server support has been re-added to Sandbox, for the most part. This time, the way you start a dedicated server is mostly the same as before. A link to a wiki page with up-to-date instructions will be in the description of this video. One major change, at least for now, is that players now connect directly to your dedicated server's IP address instead of using an IP provided by Steam networking. This makes hosting a dedicated server as an individual more difficult. For example, if you're a solo developer running a playtest, maybe you don't feel like giving out your IP address. At a first glance, game code written with peer-to-peer networking in mind appears to still function correctly in a dedicated server context. I tested this locally with the Facepunch game Walker. If your code needs to know whether it's running on a dedicated server rather than a client, there's a new application.isHeadless property you can check. Dedicated servers are a work-in-progress feature, and as of Sunday evening there are still some planned features that need to be added. These features include an in-game server list, and the ability to keep portions of the game code on the server only without sharing it to clients. More details about player avatars and clothing have been revealed, but to fully understand this topic, we'll need to talk about the future of player avatars in Sandbox. Very soon, there will be two major styles of avatar available for players to choose from. The first, officially named the Citizen, is a cartoonish, sexless sausage person that had served as the de facto mascot of Sandbox. The community-given name for this being is Terry. You've seen them already, and I'm sure you already have powerful feelings about them. The second style of player avatar is referred to as the Human. It has average or slightly idealized human proportions. A male version of the humanoid body already ships with Sandbox, and a female version will arrive sometime later. Facepunch are currently in the process of making slightly modified versions of all Citizen clothing and hair that fit the bodies of the human style of avatars. The end result looks great. Supposedly, if a 3D artist has made clothing for the Citizen, then the process of adapting that clothing to fit the human avatar doesn't take very long at all, if they know how to do it. This is important for reasons I'll soon explain. Early this week, Gary added a way for avatar clothing to be associated with a Steam inventory item. This is to support in-app purchases of avatar clothing, similar to what's already possible in Rust. Facepunch planned to eventually allow for the community to submit clothing items to the Steam workshop that, if accepted, would eventually be sold for real money. In that case, the original creator of the item would receive a share of revenue from sales of the item in Sandbox. Now, when I say clothing items, I pretty much mean all cosmetic parts of an avatar, apparel, accessories, and maybe even stuff that changes the flesh underneath. That's great, but there are a couple things you should know about workshop submissions. First, they must include support for both the Citizen and human models. Second, when Facepunch considers which submitted clothing to add to Sandbox, they'll limit the number of items they accept that have conflicts with other purchasable cosmetics. After all, it would be disappointing to buy a hat that, for whatever reason, isn't compatible with your avatar's shirt or body. There's a new item shop page in-game, but it's empty for now, and you probably won't be able to buy anything until s&box is actually released. This hard hat is an example of a cosmetic item that's currently being used to test the in-app purchases. Because I don't own it, the hard hat's icon in my avatar editor page is grayed out. But I can still include the hard hat itself in games I make for s&box. In fact, the current plan is to allow games to use the models of purchasable cosmetics. The only clear restriction so far is that the player's preferred avatar, as obtained in-game via the user data of their connection, may not reference a clothing item that the player does not own. Nicked, formerly HC1, is a Counter-Strike-style, multiplayer first-person shooter initially developed during Facepunch's first holiday challenge for s&box. On Monday, a news article was released clarifying the scope of the project as well as offering a preview of what's to come. One feature being planned is weapon attachments, which you can see being prototyped in this footage. In this post, Facepunch artist Jason shouts out the s&box assets collection on the cloud, which you should probably favorite if you want to easily find in your cloud browser the excellent 3D models created by Facepunch for s&box. A link to that is also in the description of this video. Giblets, a twitchy arena shooter type game where everyone has a railgun, has been updated to include bug fixes and quality of life improvements. It's InstaGib. As of Friday, it's now possible to create GameObjects in Hammer. When a map is compiled, the data for its GameObjects will be stored in a compiled scene file within the VPK. After being uploaded to the cloud, this map may be played in games such as Walker. I should also note that it's possible to publish scene files to the cloud and play them in Walker. Even though scene files use the .scene extension, they will appear under the map category. If you use the Walker map template to create a scene, then you'll have access to Walker components such as Func Button. Here are some good updates that I don't have very much to say about, but are worth your attention. The depth of field component has been updated to be more performant and accurate than before. This is perfect for messing around with bokeh effects. The visuals of volumetric fog have been improved. In the s&box editor, it's now possible to uninstall a downloaded cloud asset, removing all references to the asset from your project. Sound game resources now allow you to specify audible distance along with a custom fall-off curve. You are now once again able to preview the sounds from various angles and distances by clicking on this silly little circle. Some work was done on allowing the use of a gamepad to navigate through UI menus, but this feature isn't public yet. Alright, that's it for this episode. I hope to see you again next week.